They tried to slap that look right off my face, but I'm still grinning. And the money ain't run out yet, so I do believe I'm winning. For all the mess I was and will be continuing, and the fun is only beginning. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Hello and welcome to Don't Bury the Lead. We recap WWE SmackDown every Friday night after the bell. My name's John Dindell. This is Dom Scarcella. Dom, go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself.
John, last week we gave 2 slight thumbs down to SmackDown. Did they improve with their performance tonight? This is really the go-home show for the Royal Rumble since the next SmackDown is the night before. So most of the big stars are out tonight. So with that being said, John, don't bury the lead. What's our top story from the SmackDown from January 19th?
I'll tell you what, Dom. We don't ever bury the lead. And the lead is the main event. Really 2 matches, but I'll stick with the last one. Randy Orton versus Solo Sikoa. Randy Orton goes over, but there's a match before this and a big schmage for both of the matches. But we got some wrestling in I'd say a pretty unique style of main event here, where we had a match with Randy Orton versus Solo Sikoa and LA Knight versus AJ Styles. 2 singles matches where they cram in the last half hour. LA Knight versus AJ Styles gets thrown out because the Bloodline interferes. But Randy Orton goes over Solo Sikoa. Roman Reigns comes down, signs the contract. That's the gist of the main event. A lot going on here, Dom. What did you think about this main event?
The gist of the main event to me is how strong they made Randy Orton look.
Yeah.
He first of all, like you said, there's a match here against Solo Sikoa. Randy Orton RKOs Solo Sikoa for the win, and it's a 5-minute match. Starts at 9:48. He pins him at 9:53 here on the East Coast. Post-match, all 3 baby faces are in the ring because Jimmy Uso had come down to try and distract Randy Orton and got ambushed by LA Knight. And then as Jimmy retreats back up the ramp, AJ Styles meets him. And so the 2 baby faces take care of Jimmy Uso. Then they meet Randy Orton in the ring. They all kind of look at each other, a little side eye there. LA Knight attacks AJ Styles. Randy Orton RKO's LA Knight. Then he RKO's AJ Styles. Then he's looking off down the entrance ramp, and Roman Reigns ambushes him from the crowd, and Superman punches him. That's when, like you said, he reaches for the contract that Nick Aldis hands him, because Nick Aldis is out at ringside as well. Signs the contract, makes like he's Roman does little heel things really well. Makes like he's handing the contract folded up in the folder there in the case back to Nick Aldis, but instead he puts it to the side and just drops it on the floor. All the way from, the middle ring all the way down to the floor. And then he sets up to spear Randy Orton, who's staggering to his feet. But Randy Orton RKO's him as Roman charges in for the spear. So SmackDown goes off the air. Randy Orton has RKO'd everybody. Solo Sikoa to win the match. LA Knight and AJ Styles after they're like cross with each other. And then Roman Reigns after an ambush. I mean, we can get into the AJ Styles LA Knight match a little bit later, but before that, the closing image of SmackDown, Randy Orton's music playing, him standing tall in the ring, having RKO'd everybody.
Right.
Good way to send off SmackDown or not, depending on, what you think of the build throughout the show.
Pretty surprising. I mean, that he kind of almost squashed Solo Sikoa after Solo Sikoa got this massive push by beating John Cena in
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia. It looked like, this guy's the guy. He's next on deck, and for good reason. But
Mhm.
then it was sort of crazy to see him kind of just get beat tonight, just straight up beat pretty quickly. But I guess you kind of want to make Randy Orton look strong going into Royal Rumble here, and they couldn't have made him look any stronger. Beating the hell out of Solo Sikoa, standing strong. But there's always this old WWE thing where the guy who stands strong at the end typically loses in the big match, right? So it's almost like they give a little bit, like they don't want to make him look too weak, so they make him look strong before the pay per view to go home, and then they lose in the pay per view. But overall, I'd have to say the main event. You always kind of prefer a real regular match, and this is like back to back weeks with schmages. But I guess they got to set up for Royal Rumble, and that's just what they're focused on.
Yeah, it's a good point you made about they do like to have the baby faces look strong heading into pay-per-views sometimes, so that it looks like the baby faces have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you're disappointed in the pay-per-view sometimes. But yeah, there was that element of it. I agree with you on the schmaz aspect of it. I wonder if they just put too much on this show, because it wasn't crammed into the last half hour of these two matches. It was crammed into the last 21 minutes.
Right.
AJ Styles and LA Knight, the bell is at 9:37. This show goes off the air at 9:58 for the late local news.
Mm-hmm.
Right, 9:37. They go about 5 minutes before the match is thrown out. They get a lot of action in there in those 5 minutes. I mean, obviously, AJ Styles and LA Knight, they can work a fast-paced match if they have to.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good for a while. It made me want to see an LA Knight AJ Styles feud. Jimmy Uso walks out from the ramp, distracting LA Knight, who had been doing the head smash into the announce table, and the crowd's going, yeah. So he gets distracted, leaves AJ Styles at the announce
Fantastic
table.
spot.
Right, and the crowd gets to it's even easier than counting, because they don't even have to remember where they are. It's just yeah.
They don't have to know 1, 2, 3, 4. They could just say
You don't even have to look at your fingers. You can just go,
Right.
So LA Knight walks around the ring to chase off Jimmy Uso. He goes back around to the announce table. AJ Styles hits him with an enziguri. That sends LA Knight sprawling into the barricade, and there pops up Solo Sikoa, who spikes LA Knight. And then he spikes AJ Styles in the ring, and he calls out Randy Orton, because he's the last one who Solo Sikoa has to take out at the behest of his tribal chief, the tribal heir doing the dirty work for the tribal chief.
Mm-hmm.
And then their match starts. 5 minute match, 5 minute match. Schmaz is at the end of both of them. There was a lot that they crammed in here. And while I'm disappointed that we didn't get real matches with the kind of finishes or the kind of in-ring work you would expect for the length of time you would expect from these guys, they managed to get the entire bloodline, the three challengers from the Royal Rumble match, all sort of on screen and together and in the ring. There was physicality for each of them. But were there too many moving parts here for 21 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even realize that there was the second match. And I was like, okay, well, what is going on? Why, like, once the LA Knight AJ Styles match ended so quickly, I was like, oh, there's another match. I was like, okay, because I thought, whatever, 19 minutes, 20 minutes. I was like, cool, we're gonna get like a real main event, and I love AJ Styles and LA Knight.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, perfect, cool, two guys I want to see wrestle, but I didn't realize it'd be like this whole thing.
I thought the opposite, because I remember them announcing each of these matches earlier in the show.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, a little after 9:00, and they're announcing a match, and I'm like, this is AJ Styles, LA Knight, or it's got to be Solo Sikoa, Randy Orton. And instead it was the women's tag team match. And I'm going, oh my goodness, they're not going to have any time for the things they've been billing as the main event.
Yeah.
No offense to the women involved in the tag match.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of timing in a 2-hour show. So when it's 9:37 and AJ Styles and LA Knight get the bell, I'm going, there's no way. There's no way. And sure enough, after 5 minutes, the match gets thrown out. But still, that doesn't leave Solo and Randy with a lot of time. That match goes off at 9:48.
Mm-hmm.
So at most, even if they went right up to the hard out at 9:58, they'd have 10 minutes.
Right.
There was a lot of cramming here. I don't want to belabor the point of the timing. I think this little format here kind of shortchanged all the people involved as far as what we know they can do.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it did anybody any favors.
Right. But this was just about building drama for the Royal Rumble match. So this is 2 weeks in a row we've had the end of it trying to build drama for the Royal Rumble match. I will say this, though. Whereas last week, it looked like it wasn't really doing anything for the main event at Royal Rumble. This time, I think there was a little bit of that. Part of it was seeing Roman Reigns on screen rather than having his 2 lackeys do his dirty work for him.
Yeah.
But I think this did more to promote the main event at Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
So as too many moving parts as there were, I think there was maybe a silver lining if you want to, try and look for something positive to take out of it. I don't know if I'm reaching there and trying to be too nice. What say you?
No. I think you're right. And I think, Randy looking strong, it kind of gives you the impression that he could potentially win it. And it's really impressive that Roman Reigns doesn't have to do a damn thing. And he just goes out and he gets a huge pop from the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
He just looks at the crowd and they're booing him and going nuts. And you have them, it's a different type of boo, right? And maybe I'm kind of getting off the lead here, but you're getting like a Logan Paul boo, which is pretty distinctive. But Roman Reigns boo, you have some people in the crowd doing the point up, the finger up, right? Like acknowledging him. And then a lot of people really just giving it to him. So he's just crazy over. And he doesn't have to do anything.
It's not a Dominic Mysterio boo.
No.
It's the combination, we're excited that he's here because he's not there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, we don't like him. He's the heel. So
right.
You get that combination of, yes, he's here. We hate him.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes. I'm so glad I got to see him.
It's like, all right, boom.
Everybody's phone's up. Everybody wants to see him, and he doesn't have to do a damn thing.
Right.
Little bit.
It's like waving to someone excitedly with your middle finger up.
Right. And for as much beef as Hollywood Hulk Hogan got in NWO, it was a little bit like that. He'd come out, and you knew the champ was there. He had the belt, the NWO belt. Like, you just knew, like, he's the top guy. He's a heel now. You're like, yeah, this dude's a champ. So
the whole NWO is like that. Mm-hmm. Scott Hall taking the pole. Another win for the good guys.
Right. Ayo, right?
So that's all I have about the end there. If it sounded like I was perhaps burying the poor women's tag match that started at 9:14 and that made me say, oh no, we're not going to have enough time, I was trying not to. But I don't know if you want to lead the follow with that, but we got a women's tag team match. Belts that we had forgotten about on SmackDown because we haven't seen them on SmackDown in months and months and months.
Yeah, we can kick it to the follow here. So that's the lead. That's the main event. And we'll move to the next segment, the follow, where we talk about the rest of SmackDown. And yeah, I think that's a great point to start here because I didn't know who the women's tag team champions were. We've never seen them.
No. There was a spate of injuries within the last 6 months. So the women's tag team belts got passed around like a hot potato for a while. And if you've been through the Don't Bury the Lead archives, you know that I do not like hot potato belts.
Yes.
There's a shorts back there somewhere from way, way long ago. So,
Right.
yeah, so if you're watching us live tonight, or if you're catching a replay, we got plenty of stuff for Don't Bury the Lead at our YouTube channel. Subscribe to us there. We're up over 400 subscribers. We're up over 200,000 total views on the channel. And somewhere in that archive of shorts is the hot potato belts.
Right.
Apparently, it's Caden Carter and Katana Chance who go over the Unholy Union, which is a new name for a couple of NXT call-ups from last spring, Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. I think this is the first time I've heard their tag team name, Unholy Union. This match lasts, I didn't quite get the bell start of this, but it was over at 9:21. This match could not have gone more than 10 minutes because of what preceded it. I'm going to say this was maybe a 5 or 6 minute match. The highlight of it was Bailey being on guest commentary.
Right.
And Damage Control also at ringside there. Just because, Asuka and Kairi Sane, they've been teasing that they want the tag belts, so they're watching this match. And at the end, they kind of get involved. Asuka and Kairi Sane grab the belts, and they hop into the ring and kind of tease that they're not going to give them back to Caden Carter and Katana Chance. They eventually do, and it looks like they're setting up that to be the new rivalry here. So Unholy Union, they kind of almost get passed over here. I mean, they wrestle a pretty good match. We've seen Isla Dawn and Alba Fire before. I mean, they can wrestle. They just haven't had much for them to do in the women's tag division. Caden Carter and Katana Chance, they were NXT call-ups as well. Haven't seen much of them. They've been on Raw, but now they've got the belts. They can appear on both programs. They seem, I don't know, all right to me. Eventually, Katana Chance, they do this double team move where Caden Carter, who is the stronger of the two, kind of holds Katana Chance way up vertical and drops her down. So it's kind of a splash off of your partner, a variation on that. Ricochet used to jump off of Braun Strowman's shoulders, that kind of thing. It's a neat looking move. It's a good pinfall. But I don't have much. This is kind of the first time I've seen either of these teams in their current iteration, and they didn't have much time out there, so I don't want to bury the match, but it seems like right away the focus is on something else.
Right.
What do you think of either of these tag teams from what 5-6 minutes you were able to see of them today? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they were super rushed and they had to get through it. Got a lot of theme songs and entrances tonight. I feel like
Yes.
sometimes, like, why don't we cut that down a little bit and give them a couple more minutes to just wrestle? That would be nice. But I didn't really catch anything that was too extraordinary one way or the other. I want to give them a fair shake in a real match and not just a 6-minute filler. So I will hold off on kind of giving them any praise, or I should say criticism. Like they're putting a real tough spot there. 6 minutes is like, they might as well just not do a match, right? When you get to like a 5-6 minute match, you might as well not do it, especially a tag match. Because how realistic is it to pin someone in 5 minutes when it's 2-on-2, right? When typically you want to give that a little bit more time to breathe.
Could this have been bumped to next week? Because, the tag teams probably aren't going to be in the Women's Royal Rumble anyway.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Next week, and it could be like, oh, a reason to tune into SmackDown. I mean, I think
another reason, yeah.
We both definitely agree that the women's division is really strong in the SmackDown world, like women
singles,
or specifically, the singles is really strong. So it's not a shot on the women at all in general, but the women's tag titles, like, we don't know anything about them. They just randomly threw them out there, and I didn't even know where they had been. So,
well, then is the real reason for this match to have the stare down with Asuka and Kairi Sane? Does that make you more excited for the tag division that Asuka and Kairi Sane have now appeared in the ring with kind of that press conference stare down photo that they're going to be going after the belts.
Yeah, I guess it's just a setup for that.
Mm.
But ultimately, Kairi Sane and Asuka they had one tag team match and they looked great.
Mhm.
So, Damage Control continues to be way over.
Yeah.
And I like Bailey on commentary, so there's at least a
Right.
plus there.
Bailey on commentary on SmackDown for the first time since Michael Cole has been off of the SmackDown team, and she noted it tonight. So glad to be out here without Michael Cole. so
Nice.
so maybe from this match, this is 3 matches in the last 45 minutes of SmackDown that we say none of them kind of got enough time to be any good. Let's go to something that may have gotten too much time. How about the KO show?
Yeah.
It starts right before 9 o'clock. The KO show with guest Logan Paul. Logan shows a clip from WrestleMania in 2021 where he walks into the ring and KO stunners him and embarrassed him. And that's why, and Logan Paul says that's why he wanted to become a WWE pro wrestler. He wanted to join WWE because he didn't want to be his only image to be embarrassed by KO in that ring. So it's KO's fault that Logan Paul is here. I like their back and forth there for a while. And then I said, pretty good exchange, but it starts to drag.
Yeah.
And then we get to why they were really out there. KO agrees to take off his cast after Logan Paul starts mentioning, he's got that foreign object there. And as he takes off the cast and turns around, Logan Paul sucker punches him. And then that starts the big fight. And on the outside, Logan Paul rams Kevin Owens' right arm that he had just taken the cast off back into the ring post and kind of stands over him on the ring steps with the title belt going off the air. So I like the exchange start and finish. The middle dragged on me. This may have taken too much time, but I get why they were out there.
Mm-hmm.
What say you about that? Was this did they not need to take this much of a scenic route to get where they wanted to go, or were you satisfied with the amount of time they gave them?
From a time perspective, I mean, maybe a little long, but I thought this was a pretty good segment. And I'm not usually a big talking segment guy, but I think Logan Paul had some pretty good lines, and I think he was really good on the mic
Yeah.
tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen him be like a little shaky on the mic, and I think I'm gonna keep saying it, but whenever he's just himself, it's perfect. Whenever he kind of deviates from that and tries to act cool or tries to act a certain way, it if he tries to act kind of add the accent that he adds, that's not natural of him. Like that's when it deviates. That's not good. But when he just is out there being unlikable, like he's meant to be, I think he's pretty solid on the mic. And I thought he said some cool stuff tonight, like especially and this is Owens being really strong on the mic because he's the baby face, so he's kind of carrying the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he mentions that, you're not going to be like Rey Mysterio, you're not going to be like Sami Zayn, and he mentions a bunch of baby faces. Like I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be like them. Like I want to be one of one. Like I don't have to be like them.
Yep. Yep.
So I thought that was a pretty good line where he's like, I don't need to be like a regular wrestler. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
just be everything here. But there's also some weird stuff where he tries to like go on tangents about who he is, and I don't know. Sometimes it went a little flat, but I thought overall was a pretty good segment, and I would say I'm looking forward to their match. I think he's been a good U.S. champ too. So
I'm looking forward to their match as well. You brought up Logan Paul being able to play off of Kevin Owens. I think that helps him because he knows how to be a personality, but pro wrestling is more of that, that feigned animosity.
mhm.
If you're a heel, you've got to get good at that. And sometimes it helps to have the other guy in there, especially when the other guy is a seasoned veteran. Kevin Owens reminded us that he's been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
So Kevin Owens has gotten his reps in.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this
So
is
I like this match. I like this segment was too long. At some point, they almost got into I'm trying to remember my lines, and they seemed like they were repeating stuff.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I get it. You don't like each other. You think you're the best ever, and you think he's just a roly-poly nobody. And Kevin Owens doesn't understand what Logan Paul's talking about. He's just going to fight him. And okay, it was a little draggy, but like you, I'm looking forward to their match.
Yeah.
So it was a good idea for a segment. I just, with 5 matches on the card, this could have been more efficient.
There's 2 things really. Promos, less is more, right?
Mhm.
Like just go out there, give a little bit to the crowd, but you don't have to do this really long-winded monologue. Like nobody really expects that or should really out of these segments. We don't need to just kill time.
Mhm.
But then, in addition to that, I thought Logan responded to the crowd really good,
Yep.
and they were just starting to go from a what chant, which is always dangerous,
Yes.
to Logan sucks, and then
Yes.
he like started to drink it in when they
Yep.
started doing Logan sucks, and I think he was doing a good job stopping when the crowd was reacting and
Yep.
just starting to improv a little bit. So he did a good job with improvising, and maybe that's why they got long and off track because he starts improvising, and it's like, oh, where were we? But I'd rather them just sort of like almost like improvise everything when they go out there.
Right?
A
He's
little,
especially now that Logan Paul seems to be getting his sea legs under him, right?
mhm,
He's not just, staggering and looking to hold on to stuff out there on the deck of the boat. He's got his balance and seems to know more of what he's doing.
yeah. Well, all in all, solid segment, a little long, but do you want to go to the next match here?
2 tag team matches or the big opening segment at the beginning of the show, since we're talking about talking segments. This show opens with a very long kind of talking segment, doesn't it?
Mm,
Roman Reigns arrives with Paul Heyman. He tells Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa that he has to fix everything again. Then he walks off, and Solo Sikoa says under his breath to Jimmy, I'll fix it. I'll fix everything. And he's kind of glaring off towards where Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman walked away from.
mm.
So it's teasing a little tension there in the bloodline. And that leads right into Nick Aldis being out in the ring for a contract signing. He introduces AJ Styles, who comes out and signs. Then LA Knight, who comes out and signs and stares at AJ. Then he introduces Randy Orton, who comes out and signs. And none of these guys have said anything. They just walk down and they sign the contract. He introduces Roman Reigns, and Paul Heyman comes out instead. And he says that we won't be signing this contract because we haven't had time to review it. Blah, 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 blah. So Nick Aldis says, well, if you won't sign the contract, I've already got 3 names on it. It'll just be a triple threat match for the vacated WWE Universal Heavyweight Championship. And that brings Paul Heyman back to the ring for a little small talk and a little kissing up to Nick Aldis. And eventually, though, it's LA Knight and AJ Styles talking and then brawling, while Randy Orton just kind of sits in the back and just watches them. Because, hey, these are 2 of your 3 competitors. Let them fight each other.
Right.
So Randy Orton is kind of getting put over as maybe the older brother here with the 2 younger siblings who just can't stand each other. And it's a neat look for Randy Orton as the older veteran who's just keeping his cool. Everybody leaves the ring because LA Knight and AJ Styles are fighting up the entrance ramp now. And that just leaves Randy and Paul Heyman. And Randy Orton grabs Paul Heyman by the tie and just intimidates him a little bit as the segment ends. What this segment did most of all was tell us that we've got to see something else later because Roman Reigns didn't sign the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are just bickering with each other again, which we already know. So we kind of knew they had to give us some new stuff here. I thought a good opening segment, not saving the contract signing for later in the show. Get it out of the way early. especially if you had stuff to build on. Was this a good variation on the contract signing?
To be fair, I only caught the second half of it.
Mhm.
I missed a lot of the opening stuff, but I think it got the point across that AJ Styles and LA Knight were gonna go at it with each other. And LA Knight on the mic, it's been a year. He's still really good. And he
Yes.
still can just hit the old standard, like the LA Knight thing.
Mhm.
Randy Orton's crazy over too. He's
Yes.
standing there in the corner, sitting around waiting, like as those two. Like he has a good disposition about himself, like throughout the whole process. But Randy's way over, LA Knight's over, and AJ Styles can hang with them. So uh, it's three guys that I would not mind winning the title. Right? It's crazy
Yeah.
to say that, but like all three guys were solid. They've been good in everything they're doing, and yeah, it's been a treat. I'm actually kind of looking. I kind of would want to see more stuff for them on SmackDown now. All three of the guys, like they've been pretty good together.
Then they've done their job. They're
Mhm.
they're getting guys over that you want to watch on TV, and then hopefully people will want to watch the premium live event for this as well.
Mhm.
So they're doing a good job. That was probably the longest segment of the night. That opening segment with just a little bit of schmaz brawling up the entrance ramp at the end.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that brings us into a 6-man tag. John, did you know that there were 6 Latino wrestlers on the WWE SmackDown roster who are not named Rey Mysterio?
I did not, and I don't want to bury some of the backstage talk, but I only got the two main guys on each team, and then the other four I don't know. So it's Santos Escobar, who's been around a lot, and he's
Mm-hmm.
a heel Latino man, and two guys, I guess, on his team. I'm not quite sure who they are.
They had been a tag team earlier, but weren't going anywhere. Angel and Humberto.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had a name before, but they are now part of the reformed Legado del Fantasma. And the former Legado del Fantasma members, Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro, were with Carlito in the LWO, the Latino World Order.
Yeah.
This was a 8 minutes. That's all they got, but it was a pretty fast-paced 6-man tag. Eventually, Santos Escobar blind tags himself in, and then rolls up the unsuspecting Carlito for the pinfall in about 8 minutes. And this is setting up Carlito versus Santos Escobar in a match that they have billed for next Friday, a one-on-one, which is kind of where we were going anyway.
Nice.
The other 4 guys in this match, fast-paced, strong. They all look good. They're in shape. They move well. So it wasn't a bad match, but you didn't figure there would be 2 rival Latino factions in the WWE. Usually the WWE just has, 1 faction per ethnic group, right? When they're
This is
trying to do
true.
this thing.
Damage Control right now is becoming more Asian.
Right.
They always do like the LWO.
Mhm. The
Even
British Isles guys rolled together, but there was only one. It was just like the Brawling Brutes all together, right?
the Brawling Brutes. Yeah, that's like the British Isle. Yeah, right. The
Right. It's
whole
the guys.
UK.
It's the former World War II Axis powers were together in Imperium, right? There's one faction per ethnic trope.
Mhm.
That's usually the WWE limit.
Yeah.
They're now expanding, so now hopefully these guys can get out of sort of that ethnic trope and be more than that. Like obviously we don't mind um, ethnic characteristics in wrestling. I mean, it's the World Wrestling Federation, World Wrestling Entertainment. They have wrestlers from all over the world. We expect it. I think it adds something to the show when you see people all over the world wrestling. But there's got to be something more to the character than this is where we're from.
Yeah.
So I hope to see more from these guys other than, hey, we're Latinos. Like, okay, that's wonderful, but let's do some more character development other than calling you are the fill in the blank ethnic description guys.
Mm-hmm. And
So
I'll tell you what, Santos Escobar is definitely the top guy out of the six, right? I think we both have liked Santos Escobar.
he's in the prime of his career. Carlito, I think he can still go. We'll see when he finally gets a good one-on-one matchup.
Yeah, Carlito feels like the nostalgia pop that's going to
Yep.
put guys over,
Yep.
So which isn't a bad thing to do. I mean, he was out of the WWE for a while, but he came back. He's eating the apple. People like it. And he was good in the Puerto Rico show, so good that they were like, "Oh yeah, why don't you why don't you join back up with us? You're
Yeah, let's do a short-term contract. Let's get you some more appearances here.
Mm-hmm. I can remember this a while ago with the Dudley boys,
Okay.
Bubba Ray Dudley and Devon Dudley.
Mm-hmm.
After the TNA stuff, they came back to WWE as the Dudley boys, and the crowd went crazy for them because it's the Dudley boys. I mean, they're a great tag team. So they came back as old men and, they're putting people over and stuff like that. And they're kind of just setting guys up. But, they probably get paid a good amount of money to go out there and be high level jobbers,
Yeah, they the guys that, get a pop that move the needle, they can maybe sell some merch again. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can grow into their roles and into their abilities. At 8 minutes, this may have been the longest match of the night. As far as I can tell, yeah, 8 minutes, longest match of the night, because the other tag team match we had was pretty deadly. Kit Wilson and Elton Prince versus Tyler Bate and, not Butch, Pete Dunne.
Yeah.
Pete Dunne is back. His old NXT name. I don't know if he's very different from his Butch persona. It's almost the same thing, maybe a little less stomping around the ring like a old English street urchin kid thing out of a Charles Dickens novel.
That's kind of what they made him, didn't they?
Right, as Butch, and now he's just Pete Dunne. He's more mature, still the same thing. They do a funny thing backstage after this match where one of the backstage reporters tracks down Pretty Deadly and says, how was this match today? And they're saying, we were not prepared. We were supposed to face Tyler Bate and Butch. Who's Pete Dunne? Right. They have no idea that it's the same human being. The only people in the WWE arena or watching at home who have no idea that Pete Dunne is Butch were Kit Wilson and Elton Prince. So bravo, gentlemen, for going with that shtick there.
Right. Yeah.
But Dunne hits the bitter end on Elton for the pinfall at 8:51. Match started at about 8:44. Pretty good fast-paced match. Did you notice anything different about Pete Dunne now that he's Pete Dunne?
Pete Dunne is initially what he was named, and then Vince got his hands on Pete Dunne and didn't like it and changed it to Butch. And Pete Dunne always had a pretty good gimmick because he was the bruiserweight instead of the cruiserweight. Yeah, and he's got the big fur. He's the first guy really to have the big fur. Well, not first guy, but he had a pretty distinctive thing with a big fur. And he was definitely a guy that was next on deck, that was always good in NXT, that felt like, okay. And I think he has proven that he's a hell of a worker. I think this was the match of the night for me. Pretty definitely Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. Tyler Bate is weird, but the wrestling style is definitely some moves I haven't seen really. And he definitely has his own thing going for him. So
anything stand out to you as far as what he was doing? He's a shorter, stockier guy, but he does some power moves.
The airplane spin.
Yes.
The airplane spin, and Pretty Deadly did a great job selling it.
Yes.
The airplane spin, one of the members of
hits up on the shoulders. Yep.
And they spin him around, knocks over one of the guys that are coming in. I forget. I think it's the blonde Pretty Deadly.
Elton tries to come in and break it up, and he can't figure out how to do it because Kit Wilson is spinning around. He's trying to time it to get in there. The person trying to enter the department store through the revolving doors.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, oh no, I got what? No. And yeah, Elton Prince is selling that, and finally he makes his move and just gets kicked by his partner in the face.
Yeah. And then the partner goes down and he goes up and swings out of the ring because he's all dizzy. So
Yeah,
he's actually selling the fact that he'd be dizzy because usually
yep.
people don't really sell, oh man, I'm dizzy. But I thought this was a pretty good match, and I think it's a unique style. It does kind of lean a little bit more into the comedy stuff,
Mhm.
but um, I still think it's pretty good, and at least a unique aspect of it. And they're just kind of undoing the Vince McMahon thing, but by calling him Butch and making him a little. You said it perfectly, really. The Charles Dickinson character. I never really could put my finger on what it was, but it was like that. But
I
now
heard somebody else say that, so I can't take full credit for it. But yeah, he was always this like he was the shorter guy, so he was always like this street punk, kid. You could imagine him just hanging out in an alleyway somewhere in London, or
right.
a real bad part of one of the British cities or something, right?
Mm. Well,
That's
um,
kind of a Vince thing, though, isn't it? Don't they a lot of times change guys' names when they get called up from NXT?
I don't
Or at
know
least they
why.
used to. Like Gunther was Walter in NXT,
Yeah.
and
He
they changed him up, and then they changed. Maybe it was just the guys from NXT Europe who they did that to. They gave them new names when they brought them over,
because
because I think
Walter
almost
was great.
everybody in Imperium had got new names when they brought them over from NXT Europe.
Well, the funny thing with Gunter was he was Walter,
Yeah,
and then they changed it to Gunter Stark, who is a famous Nazi, and that's of course a Vince thing.
that's the Vince thing.
They're like, it's not Nazi enough. Like, call him a famous Nazi. And so there was some pushback when they named him the Nazi name. Then they were like, okay, just
No.
you don't have to have Adolf Hitler out there. Like, you don't have to go
Yes.
full Nazi. You could just go like allude to certain aspects of it that he's German, not
Yeah.
necessarily that he's a Nazi, right?
He's Austrian. He's from the Germanic states there in the middle. Yeah. That's maybe we don't need to go quite there with it, but yeah, that's I think it's better for everybody that they get a non-cartoonish, non so ethnic tropish personality. It's too much of a crutch, and frankly, these guys are talented where they don't need to have only that crutch.
Mhm.
And I think we'll be able to see more of that from Pete Dunne.
Yeah. And, ultimately, I think this was my match of the night.
Yeah,
Uh, any other matches or segments you wanted to talk about, Dom?
those are our 5 matches. We talked about the 2 big talking segments. The only other good talking segments here were pre-recorded videos. One for each faction. Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits say they're looking for Final Testament. It was a pretty good short video with those guys. I like it. I like how they're trying to give these guys the personality that, yeah, you may see us dress in fine clothes, but we can still fight. I like that. I like where they're going with those 3 guys. Then the Final Testament later in the second hour got their pre-recorded video saying, "You want us? Okay, we'll fight." And it looks like this is being set up for next week's SmackDown, the pay-per-view Eve, the Royal Rumble Eve edition of SmackDown. Looks like it's going to be Final Testament versus Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits in a 6-man tag. Okay, and will this be when we finally see BFAB join with Bobby Lashley and Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins there, since there are 5 people, including a valet and a manager, total in Final Testament here. So they teased that a few months ago that BFAB, because she was not released. Top Dollar, AJ Francis was released, but BFAB was not. So now it becomes, okay, find something for your employee to do. And they teased a while that she was going to have something to do with Bobby Lashley's new crew, but that hasn't materialized yet. It's
Um,
still there if they want to try it. What do you think of this faction on faction thing they have building?
I like it. I think it's a good use of, um, boy. I think so. I would say this. I like the fact that they did the vignette tonight, and I thought the
Mhm.
vignette was really good as far as Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, and Bobby
Yeah.
Lashley. Like I think it was a better representation than when they handed the mic around and they
Yes.
tried to get everybody over because people just love Lashley and they're going to cheer him, but they're supposed to be like heels.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's a good combo and it's a good transformation because they couldn't just keep doing the frat boy thing. So
That's
they
right.
kind of got him in the right direction and maybe got it back on the rails. We, you know, not everyone can do promos, and that's okay. Like it's not their strong suit, but Montez Ford is fantastic in the ring. So like, yeah, just
Mhm.
wrestle. Who cares? And Bobby Lashley can kind of do both. He's,
Mhm.
so you can just have Bobby talking for you. You don't have to have Montez Ford on the mic. And so I like that so far. And his name is escaping me, and I don't.
Karrion Kross.
Yes, you caught me on it. Karrion Cross. Maybe the gimmick is getting a little less ridiculous. There's some sort of I admit that's not necessarily true, but like I didn't feel like I was like, what the hell was this tonight? Like I didn't write a note like what
He
is this?
keeps reinventing himself, right? Like when we first
Every
saw him, he
promo.
was the spooky guy with the smoke and the black and white. And then he reinvented himself into the spooky guy with the smoke and the black and white. And then he looked like he was going to be just a big old tough guy against Rey Mysterio. And then he reinvented himself as kind of a spooky guy, and there was some smoke, and it was black and white.
Right?
And now this time, he's reinvented himself as a spooky guy with this. There's some smoke and there's black and white, but now he suckered 3 more people into it.
Yes. He's a little bit more manipulative because he got these two guys. You don't know who they are.
Right? They've I don't want to say breeding. I think they just kind of replicate as pod people or something. But
Right?
now
Yeah.
there's more of them.
Um, yeah, his gimmick continues to be really confusing because there's different shades of all kinds of stuff. Sometimes there's cards, so he's a
There's
magician.
tarot cards.
Sometimes
Yes.
there's dancing.
Yes.
Sometimes, I think we thought he was a dancer at first, and
Yes.
yeah, so there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. But you got the gist of it. I feel like black and white spooky guy, but not Bray Wyatt spooky. Just
No, there's no lanterns and puppets.
there's no lanterns and puppets.
No, that's the spooky guy with the lantern and puppets. This is the spooky guy with the tarot cards and the dancing.
Hey. Yeah. So our favorite Karrion Cross, as long as we get him every Friday night, we'll be here. You know, he
He
could have been the
you,
lead.
you don't turn off the TV when you see a Karrion Kross thing, do you?
No,
It's like
no,
I have to watch just in case this is a car wreck.
exactly.
And you could get anything from car wreck to being pleasantly surprised.
This is true. You know,
Like, oh, wow, look at this. He can wrestle.
you do
You
get
know,
pleasantly surprised sometimes, and that's the great thing about Karrion Cross. But you at least get a confusing backstage promo segment or
yes.
vignette, really. Um,
But
Thumb,
frankly, these may be the guys that you're talking about because the confusion with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, this may be the program they need to get rid of that confusion and just make them all be baby faces.
yeah,
Because Karrion Cross, for whatever he is a heel.
right,
For whatever they're trying to do with him, he gets booze.
yeah.
And maybe this will be the thing that cements Bobby Lashley as, yeah, he's a babyface. Go ahead, you can cheer him. You're supposed to. And maybe Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins can go back to being cheered, but not in the frat boy cheer way.
And Dom, on that note, I think that's about it for the SmackDown recap. Anything else you
Yes.
wanted to talk about here?
I want to talk about how itchy my thumb is getting here. I think it's drive time.
Is
I
it?
think it's time for the thumb drive, where you and I distill this entire show we've watched into a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. There are no star ratings. There are no letter grades. There are no number grades. You're taking this college course, pass or fail. Thumbs up or thumbs down. That's it.
That's right, Dom. we're not Dave Meltzer. We don't do star ratings. We just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down for the show tonight. So when you're ready, I'm ready. Okay, ready?
Yep.
2, 1. Oh, differing opinions.
Differing opinions.
Thumbs up from me, thumbs down from Dom. Dom, why'd you give this show a thumbs down?
Oh, we're going to do the bad news first. Okay, here we go. The show seemed like a mess to me. The longest match was 8 minutes.
Wow.
It just seemed like a mess. It seemed like everything was here for something else, which I understand doing that with some angles, but not with everything that happens on the show.
I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but the Logan Paul Kevin Owens segment actually squeezed me to a thumbs up. I was going to
Okay.
give it a thumbs down, but like, I'm thinking like it was like if I'm giving it out of 100, it's like a 51 out of 100. Like it was right there. But
no number grades.
There's no number grades. It was right there for me to give it the thumbs down, and I was like, that segment actually made me a little bit more interested for the Logan Paul Kevin Owens match. And then, they can't give away too much for the main event. You could have skipped this show probably, and it's not the best SmackDown, but I think it's good enough to have it's given me some interest going into the Royal Rumble. So that's my take on it. I gave it a thumbs up.
Okay. And that's an important thing that the WWE wants. They want to build interest in the premium live event in the pay-per-view. So if this gave you more interest in the pay-per-view, then we have to say they did their job, right? And that's a good argument for saying the show was a thumbs up overall. I mean, I was close, but as I just looked over my notes and I went 5-minute match, no finish. 5-minute match, schmaz. 5-minute match, really not important to build something else. Match of the night was 7 minutes, and the joke was that nobody knew that Pete Dunne was Butch.
Right. Oh, yeah.
8-minute match, longest of the night. All it was there for was to get to Carlito Santos Escobar. So I just looked down everything and I said, it was just too much of a mess. But I understand your point, and in some aspects, this does make me more interested in the pay-per-view. But maybe I'm a little selfish here, but I watched SmackDown for more than just a commercial for the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, we really needed a good match, and we didn't get it. It is a little concerning because we were thumbs up, no questions for a while there with SmackDown and LA Knight. And I feel like going into 2024 here, I'm hoping that coming out of Royal Rumble, we get some better SmackDowns. And I hope we're not just getting a show where we mail it in and, we mail it in until the next pay-per-view. We do like a couple matches here and there. But I felt like it was a lot hotter going from in 2023. Even some of these shows that were throwaways with like they were or like a dead time of the year. I was like, these are pretty good shows. So hopefully we get a little bit of an improvement. But overall, it looks like we're split here, which is good.
Which is fun.
Right. It gives a little bit more back and forth, but I know it's snowing outside though.
It is snowing outside, but you know what? It's heat in here, and I think it's because it's so cheap in here.
This is true.
Even in the dead of winter, cheapness brings heatness.
This is true. Cheapness does bring heatness. And this brings us to our next segment here. Cheap heat. Cheap heat is where we discuss trending topics in the WWE, AEW, New Japan, wrestling in general. So we'll discuss trending topics, make shorter videos out of those. And if you're on our YouTube channel right now, you can see little smaller clips where we kind of talk about these different segments here. Or I should say we take some of these news stories and compact them to like 3-4 minute bite-sized clips. So check that out on YouTube. But without further ado, let me.
Yeah, we only watch one show per week that we comment on, but we know that the pro wrestling world is bigger than just SmackDown and even bigger than just the WWE. And let's do a callback here to something you and I were talking about. You mentioned Jack Perry when we were talking about CM Punk and the altercation that the two of them got into that led to CM Punk's dismissal from AEW. And we also noted, has Jack Perry been doing much? And you said no, he may be the guy that needs to go to Japan. Well, Jack Perry's people have been watching Don't Bury the Lead.
Yes.
They took your advice. Who shows up at an NJPW Battle in the Valley event but Jack Perry? He rips up his AEW contract. He went after someone named Shota Umino. After their match, we can see it here. There is Shota Umino taking a selfie with a fan and a guy in a mask, and the crowd clocks him and runs over. And we wonder, who is this? It's security, the most inept people in the world, pro wrestling security. Try to get this 160-pound person away and can't do it. And it's Jack Perry. You said maybe he needs to go to New Japan and maybe toughen up and show a different personality, maybe in a wrestling environment where they like more of the tough guy stuff and the strong style. You could see him there. He's like, smirking at people, spitting on the floor, glancing around with his head up. There's no hint of Jungle Boy here, right?
No.
They're not playing Baltimore and he's, prancing down to the ring in a loincloth.
Yeah.
Is this what Jack Perry needs? Do you like this development?
I don't like this, Dom. I love it.
You love it. All right.
I thought this was great. We're not going to play the sound because copyright, but this specifically, this segment here, him going out, ripping, the crowd is booing the hell out of him. He rips up the AEW contract, and I think he needed to get out of AEW's bubble of like comedy, like Jungle Boy. You can only go so far with the Jungle Boy thing, and he was trying to get over as a heel, and he certainly was here. So I like the direction he's headed. He can go to Japan, get out of AEW for a while, harden up a little bit, and when he'll become a lot more valuable when he comes back for sure.
There's the supposed AEW contract that he takes out of his pocket. And this is where he just tears it up and throws it away. This story came to us from WrestleZone, so thank you for the story there. And of course, this was NJPW World's Twitter that had the video clip up there. So if you follow these guys online at all, that's where this stuff is from.
Yeah. And I think it's a good idea for New Japan too. To get some attention toward them, and then kind of getting some of that CM Punk locker room heat, which, be careful with it. You don't want to just be the promotion that like has all this goofy stuff going on. But pretty cool to see. I
think his armband, though, I think he's playing into it there. His armband, I think, said scapegoat.
Right.
So he's kind of playing up, yeah. Perry also put on a black armband that had scapegoat on it. So he is playing up the fact that, hey, he's not welcome over in that other promotion anymore. So he's here to, make a name for himself. So is this a good balance of, hey, people know who Jack Perry is. You can't just run away from your career. Is this a good balance of acknowledging what people already know about him? And trying to bring it to his new job.
This couldn't have gone any better. He leaned right into it.
Good.
He addressed it. He didn't just sort of like go around it. You kind of see Chris Jericho kind of trying to go around a lot of stuff right now, rather than just like face it head on. He just faced the controversy head on, and ultimately, the little spat with CM Punk might make his career. Like, hey, it sounds like a young CM Punk, right? Like doing stuff doing stuff like this. This is what what may put CM Punk on the map, right? Is being this controversial guy.
He's
So
got the full beard, so he doesn't look as young and boyish.
no, he's got a different look. I mean, he still is. He's just got to go over there and pound some Japanese beers and eat some a lot of sushi. Put some weight on, and I think we'll be good.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know.
He is a smaller wrestler, but he can do the tough guy thing if he needs to.
Mm-hmm.
And over in Japan, where they don't have as many of the big, large lumbering guys, maybe he can find a way to be not just the acrobatic guy who jumps around and kind of is the baby face who just takes his quick shots at people. Great still image here from New Japan Pro Wrestling that WrestleZone selected for their article here. This is the torn up contract in mid-flight here. Just a perfect shot. So we like what they're doing with this. Is good news for Jack Perry. We're gonna stick with non-WWE stuff here. What do you know about TNA? Although there is a WWE connection here. Moose wins the TNA World Championship at TNA Hard to Kill. Nick Nemeth appears. We know who Nick Nemeth is, right?
Mm-hmm.
As Moose is celebrating here, and this comes to us from ProWrestlingFeed.com, Nick Nemeth appears. The rest of Moose's cheerleading faction is looking for him at the entranceway. But of course, Nick Nemeth comes from the crowd side. It's Dolph Ziggler. And he is ready for Moose, who had just beaten Alex Shelley for the TNA World title.
Another company, TNA, and they get some traction. I think it'd be great, and it's weird, but it looked like there was a decent crowd at this event. It didn't look like your typical TNA event, which almost feels like it's shot in a borderline like high school gym,
They do try and do some of their pay-per-views. They've been in Las Vegas consistently. That did look like a good crowd. They already announced he wrestled in something that was to air on a future episode. So right away he was announced for a match. So they're throwing him right into getting him wrestling. Your point about if TNA can now attract some big names, that's good to have a third promotion that can do that. Yeah, I agree with you. I remember when TNA was kind of the runner-up to WWE for a while. I would watch Christian Cage show up there, then Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually Booker T showed up for a while. Drew McIntyre was there as Drew Calloway. Bobby Lashley was there. So TNA was in the slot that AEW kind of occupies now as the runner-up to WWE. If there are three promotions capable of signing big name guys, then yeah, that just makes it a little extra spicy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if TNA has like a cheap pay-per-view or like a cheap show we could watch and be like, yeah, I'll check out a TNA show. Why not? See what they're doing over there. I do want to say my buddy Steve LaCastro, I mentioned him on this podcast before, he likes TNA. He tells me he watches it. So he watches AEW and TNA. So he doesn't watch any WWE, but he's watching TNA, which is hilarious. But
Steve, if you're watching right now, either live in the chat or in the comments, or anybody else who watches AEW or watches TNA, tell us in the comments, tell us in the chat, what do you think of this move by the former Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, going to TNA? Are you surprised he didn't go to Japan like Jack Perry did, or to AEW like a lot of big name guys have gone? Are you surprised that he went to TNA? What do you make of how they're using him right away? They let him make a big splash after the title match, their main event at their big pay-per-view Hard to Kill. And then they advertise him right away for a match. Tell us what you think of Nick Nemeth's debut, and if you think TNA was a good choice for him. Let us know your thoughts, because I was surprised by this.
wow.
I'm hopeful about it, but I was surprised. I didn't think he'd be in TNA.
It ultimately, yeah, Yeah, I mean, like we've got some people here in Twitch. We've had some people, quite a few people popping in and out of YouTube. So feel free to leave a comment, leave us a chat message as we go through here. But yeah, that's Nick Nemeth in TNA.
Nick Nemeth, let's stay with TNA's Hard to Kill. You didn't think there was something else from Hard to Kill I'd bring up, did you?
Right.
Jordan Grace beat Trinity Fatu for the TNA Knockouts, which is their women's division championship. But a perhaps bigger story is the fact that Bayley and the former Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné, were at this show to support Trinity, but afterwards they took a picture with Jordan Grace.
Yeah.
Look at all of this cross promotions. You've got at least 3 different promotions represented here. Bayley and Mercedes Moné not only hanging out, but going to a TNA show. And just the camaraderie with all these professionals in the back there. Bayley hamming it up. She just loves being on camera anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
As long as Michael Cole's not around, apparently,
Bayley,
she's fine.
There's not a camera that Bayley isn't going to go hog, and that's why she's great for pro wrestling. Yeah, she'll even be in those backstage interviews when they talk to the media, and she's hamming it up with the media. So
she's great on the mic. She's great in the ring. She's been seen with Sasha Banks not only here. The two of them took a picture with podcaster Sal Vulcano this past week of Impractical Jokers. Bayley and Sasha Banks, they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
This is just going to fuel rumors that Sasha Banks is coming back to WWE. And you know who would like that? Bayley, who gives an interview to SI.com talking about how great Sasha Banks is. Calls her Michael Jordan. Brings out the best in her. And she doesn't think their last match has already taken place. She thinks that she's got another match with Sasha Banks in her. And in order for that to happen, either Sasha's got to go to WWE or Bayley's got to leave and go somewhere else. They even have still footage of their great NXT match here that really set the tone for the new style of women's wrestling in the WWE. We've talked about the 4 horsewomen before. These were 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Bayley, Sasha Banks. And they've apparently remained great friends, which is good to see. And that's only going to fuel the rumor mill, isn't it?
Yep. Bayley and Sasha Banks in NXT had a pay-per-view match that was, for my money, at the time, the best women's match I'd ever seen. And
I think a lot of people agree with you from what I've read and heard.
And there was elements of Fabulous Moolah back in the 80s that was really killer, that I really liked how vicious she was. And then once the 90s hit, it was all bathing suit models and their Playboy girls, which would now be like Instagram models, they're just models. So they never really hit that mark again. I know Trish Stratus and Lita kind of were headed that direction a little bit, but those 2 knocked it out of the park when they wrestled each other. So yeah, I would definitely pay some pretty good money to see them wrestle again. And I've said this before, but I hope that Mercedes Moné at least has a run in AEW. I think it'd be a little bit more interesting rather than have her go back to WWE. Because
away. You don't want to see her in WWE right away.
Right away.
I think she has something to do in AEW.
I think she has some gas in the tank in AEW, and then a trip back home to WWE would be perfect.
She was supposed to win a title or had won a title in Japan, and during a big match, injured herself and called an audible and told the other wrestler, "You're winning this."
Yeah.
Because she just knew she was going to need to rehab for months. Mm-hmm. And so, a class act by her. Bayley and Sasha Banks, they were part of the wrestlers, the way you seem to be describing it. They were the wrestlers who made Trish Stratus' style of wrestling less of an outlier and more the norm in the WWE.
Right.
So when Trish came back this past year, she fit right in. As someone who could wrestle. Once she got her legs back under her, figuratively and literally, mm-hmm. she fit more right in with the real athletic wrestling style of the WWE women's division. So yeah, this will fuel the rumors, which is fantastic because we like rumors. Rumors make for heat. Rumors make for cheap. And we like cheap heat.
Cheap heat, baby. Yep, that's exactly right, Dom. So
Speaking of cheap heat, we've seen LA Knight on morning shows before. He was up in one in Toronto. He and Grayson Waller were on Sunrise in Australia, ready to rumble in Perth. They're talking up, of course, the big Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. And as they're doing this, they're asking LA Knight if he can demonstrate the blunt force trauma. And he's saying, no, I don't think you want to do that. Someone is going to get hurt. Trying to keep a little bit of kayfabe here as he's sitting next to Grayson Waller. And of course, the camera guy is really, really into taking some punishment here. Starts calling out Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller, the sound is off here, but you can kind of figure out what's happening. Grayson Waller wants to go and is trying to tell the guy, if I punch you, this is not going to be fake. This is not going to be, as the female host tries to regain her composure, hiding behind her papers there. The male host tries to shove the camera guy out of the way because we don't want that here. Grayson Waller is trying his best to kind of save the kayfabe of the business as LA Knight just sits there wondering what is going on. I can't believe I flew to Australia for this.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
That's all I need. 2 morning show people in Australia tell me, can you do your finishing move on somebody? No.
Now, did you get the impression that this was a work, or was this kind of a bit of a shoot?
I got the impression that these guys were there to try and be for the mainstream Australian. They're on Sunrise. They don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
They just asked one of them to do their finishing move on some random crew member. I mean, not only do you have no idea what's going on, but you didn't see that old footage from Hulk Hogan on Richard Belzer's show.
Right,
when Richard Belzer wants to have a front face lock demonstrated to him and then passes out in 5 seconds.
Right.
Like, I got the impression that this was LA Knight and Grayson Waller with a heck of a lot of jet lag on a morning show and just trying to get out of this segment as quickly as possible.
Right.
Right. And maybe Grayson, and I think Grayson Waller did well for himself here because he can't let a camera guy punk him.
Right.
He can't do that.
No, there's no way that the camera guy should be going over there and like messing with him without
No.
him. And I think he did a good job without making it too physical. But he did kind of like stand up to him physically and was like, "Yo, dude, you need to chill." Like,
this is not going to end well if you want my finishing move. Like this. I don't care how jacked you think you are in your muscle T-shirt that's 2 sizes too small for you. Right? We can do that too. We wrestle in our underwear. We know the drill.
We know the drill.
So yeah. What a pair, LA Knight and Grayson Waller. Sending one of the Australians back there like they did with Rhea Ripley earlier. We talked about that when she and Dominic Mysterio went to Australia to talk up the Perth event in February for Elimination Chamber. But this could have gone from bad to worse. I like Grayson Waller.
He's good.
He even did a funny thing on tonight's SmackDown where he got overexcited and booked Austin Theory, his friend, into a match with Carmelo Hayes for next week. As Austin Theory looked at him strangely, like, you got to stop doing that, man.
Hey, Dom, give me 1 minute here. I'll be right back.
Sure. So this was as fun as it could possibly be with 2 jet lag guys halfway around the world on a morning show with people who are not wrestling fans, trying to perhaps eke them into being wrestling fans, at least for one premium live event next month that is taking place in Perth, Australia. Still going to be interesting to see how they do this time-wise. When is the show going to be live in Australia time? And what will that do to the timing of broadcasting it here in the United States? When they've been over to Europe and, say, the Middle East, they've been able to do an evening show live for the arena crowd that becomes an afternoon show, like it's an afternoon football game for us here in the United States. But if they're going evening show in Australia, that's going to be a morning show here in the US. And I can't imagine they want a morning show. So I really am interested to see how they do this logistically, just with the time zones. This is when you get really creative, no pun intended there, WWE, and see what you can do for us. But yeah, two of the better personalities I think on SmackDown, LA Knight and Grayson Waller. The last time we saw them together, LA Knight was beating up Grayson Waller. They seem to be behaving themselves on this couch. Although we did not see, LA Knight was not quick to jump up from the couch and defend his co-worker Grayson Waller there when the jacked up and maybe hyped up cameraman wanted to go at it. It's part of the job, right? It's part of the job. Other WWE news, Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw suffered a knee injury in his match against Jinder Mahal. He went through with the match and retained his World Heavyweight Championship. WrestleZone here tells us he suffered a torn MCL and a partially torn meniscus. We're not sure of the severity. Grade 1 MCL tears, as the Cleveland Clinic notes. A grade 1 MCL tear can heal on its own within 1 to 3 weeks, but a grade 2 or 3 tears need proper treatment, including surgery. Seth Rollins is trying to avoid surgery, as expected, because Seth Rollins is a guy who likes to wrestle a lot. That was the whole point of creating the World Heavyweight Championship, or resurrecting the World Heavyweight Championship and giving it to Seth Rollins, is the fact that he is the fighting champion that the WWE needs here. This is WrestleZone, combining some reports from Pro Wrestling Torch and Fightful Select. Seth Rollins, this is a tough one if he's out, because he is arguably the best worker in the WWE.
Yeah,
and he's the right guy to have a title belt. And is this as loaded as the WWE roster is? It is a loss if Seth Rollins is on the shelf, especially if he has to give up the belt, right?
Yeah, I was wondering that tonight. If he doesn't have the belt, or I should say, like, if he's really hurt for a while, what they're going to do. Because it always sort of felt like Damian Priest was going to cash in and beat him, right? Like,
it was a matter of when, right?
It's not if, but when. So what happens to Damian Priest cashing in? Does he cash in on Roman Reigns? Would be completely insane.
Yes.
But like, that Money in the Bank is got to be around the corner, right? I mean, I don't think
he's got a few months left before it expires, like some too old milk there.
Right. So, and it's always a shame if they can't win a title when they cash in. So, I don't know.
Does it take the luster off it if he cashes in on a clearly injured Seth Rollins?
No, I think it's perfect then. If
really,
Seth
Rollins, does it make him more of a heel that he took advantage of the guy who was hurt?
Exactly. He took advantage of the guy that was hurt, and he cashes in.
Okay.
I think that would be perfect if you could get Seth in the ring. I don't know if he's going to be wrestling CM Punk or if that was the plan. Or I know they've had some. I mean, I feel like with CM Punk back in the wrinkle, they've had some. They have to face off at some point, Seth Rollins and CM Punk. So if he's hurt, what do you do with Punk then? You know.
That's the next thing. Wow. So this could be throwing in the wrench into a couple of different angles and programs here. There's a lot going on with Seth Rollins. This is a big blow if he can't. I mean, if he can somehow, now that he's got the belt, he doesn't have to be in Royal Rumble. If he can rest for a month, maybe he wrestles in Perth, or maybe he just is back for the road to WrestleMania. Maybe he can just heal it up. Who knows? He's kind of famous or infamous for wrestling with injuries. So it's not that he's incapable of carrying himself when he's not 100%, but having the title belt and trying to throw him into either one or two different high-level programs, that makes things a little iffy. All best to Seth Rollins healing up. This did not look like it was a work. It looked like a real injury that he suffered.
Yeah.
So
Let's
do maybe the lightning round here with older people in wrestling. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
Hulk Hogan and his friend, who apparently is a former Marine, saw a car flip after getting sideswiped. They jumped into action here, and Hulk and his buddy rescued the driver from her flipped vehicle. This comes to us from TMZ Sports. Hulk Hogan apparently punctured the airbag, which was pinning the woman in her car, with a ballpoint pen. What you gonna do when the largest pythons in the world and a ballpoint pen run wild on you? What say you about the Hulkster and his buddy jumping into action here to be good Samaritans?
Well, maybe he's on the right path. We kind of did a segment before. We're talking about him, becoming baptized, and maybe he's just kind of on the right path and helping people out now instead of, going around and saying bad things on camera and maybe being a little too sauced up at some events. But, ultimately, it's cool. Good for him for going out and doing the right thing. But also, who said the story? Was it Hulk or is it someone else? He's got the boy that cried wolf kind of thing, right? And maybe
apparently they've got some corroboration here. We are not accusing Hulk and his friend of flipping a car and staging this at all. This seems to be a real thing. I don't know much about Hulk out of the ring, but in recent years, between his bar and other things he's doing, he seems to have settled into retired life. He's still famous, but he's just a dude, and he seems like an all right guy to me. I like him.
Yeah, me too.
Jim Ross, his contract with AEW apparently runs out at the end of January.
Oh,
he
wow.
wants to continue announcing. Have you heard about this, and what make of you of this story?
No, I haven't heard this. What's going on?
Comes to us from Ringside News. JR apparently said on his podcast that his contract renewal remains pending. He, of course, wants to keep doing it at least for a few months more because Sting's final match is in early March.
Oh, okay.
And he thinks it would be great, and I do too, if Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone were there to call Sting's final match with Ric Flair in Sting's corner, because 30 whatever years ago at the first ever Clash of the Champions, it was Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone calling Sting versus Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Let's say, does Jim Ross still have it, even in a limited capacity? Does he still have it as an announcer, at least for big name stuff?
I have liked Jim Ross's late career. There have been some complaints by some nerds on the internet that don't seem to like him, but I like his style where he basically doesn't really sell a lot of the stuff in the matches. The match isn't good. He's not going to sit there and act like it's the greatest match ever. Michael Cole would do stuff like that. It's very annoying. And one thing is, he doesn't sell matches that are bad, but he does a great job at getting the baby faces over. So guys like Jon Moxley, I think a lot of his success early on in AEW has a lot to do with Jim Ross announcing, because he does a great job at getting the faces over. He does a great job of talking about their athletic abilities, which is just a lost art form with announcers these days. So, they're obsessed with the name of the move when who cares what the name of the move is? Like, try to get the idea of what's happening in the match and beat off the crowd. But anyways, I think Jim Ross is great. And he's had some health issues. So he's been restricted to Jacksonville. He did a show there. And he did a show in Oklahoma, which was great because he's the hometown boy in Oklahoma.
Sure.
So a lot of stuff with so he's had to stay local due to his health concerns. I'd like to see them extend him. And what they did recently, which I think is a really good idea, is they just have him there for the main event. So the AEW Collision, he just did the main, and he doesn't have to do a lot. He goes out there, he gives his all for 30 minutes, and that's it. You don't make him do a long card, and I think he's really good in that role. He's not going to be doing the 6 hour or the 4 hour pay-per-views. You can give that to the rest of the guys, but I've always liked him. So
Okay, well, I misspoke here. His contract expires not at the end of January, but on February 14th, maybe it will be a happy Valentine's Day present for the AEW fans to have Jim Ross's contract either renewed or extended for just a little while longer. One of the people we mentioned, Ric Flair, this comes to us from comingsoon.net. AEW stance on Ric Flair getting physical has been revealed. Apparently, Ric Flair wants to have more in-ring things to do. AEW does not want that. They don't want him to have a match. He's not been considered for any in-ring performances, but has been actively pushing to do more spots. That was a tweet from Fightful Select. WrestleOps retweeted there. He wants to have something to do with MJF. He's even saying he can't wrestle, but I can still talk better than anybody. They'll find out if they turn me loose. I'm dying to go one-on-one with MJF, man. It would get a rating too. Let's talk, young man. Ric Flair has always been somewhat dangerous because he has the energy, or at least exudes the energy, of a much younger man.
yeah.
And where's the sweet spot with Ric Flair? Is it him just talking and maybe getting chopped on the outside because he gets a little too close to the ring? Or is it him actually getting into the ring on purpose to do something physical? Where's the sweet spot for you, lightning round, as you are the AEW fan?
He could be the Paul Heyman, who should never be taking any bumps, and then occasionally he does. And when he does, it's like the end of the world. It shouldn't be like every match he takes a back bump, Yeah, maybe
okay.
he's a little bit like Vince too. Vince would never take any bumps, but occasionally, as an old man, he'd go in there and take a bump. So,
if that's our sweet spot, my name is Ric Flair.
yes, I think he should be a manager. Although I will admit, if he does wrestle again, I will watch it. So
he apparently wanted to do something with his son-in-law, Andrade El Idolo, who's married to Charlotte Flair. He has left AEW though, so he can't do it in AEW. Apparently, Ric Flair signed for a 2-year deal with his Woo energy drink as well. And the last lightning round thing we got here, Sting, who had been in apparently a big multi-man match with Konosuke Takeshita. Takeshita was talking about what a great thrill was to be in there with him because he had watched Sting in Great Muta. And this again comes to us from WrestleZone. Sting replied to him that he sees a lot of Great Muta in him. Another Great Muta in the making. He has all the tools for sure. We'll pop that one open on Twitter there. Did you see the match in question here where Sting and Takeshita were in the same ring there all together? And what did you make of it?
I can't recall the match, but he is one of the guys.
8-man tag match at AEW World's End. They clashed again in a tag team bout on the January 10th episode of AEW Dynamite. Sting was on the winning side of both matches because apparently that's what he does. But good, big praise here. Do you think, since you didn't see that match, you've seen Takeshita before, right?
I'm very high on him. I would agree with Sting's assessment. He is a huge Japanese guy, and that's one of the things is like he's not just a Japanese guy. He's huge and he's athletic as hell, and he has oh boy, he's got a manager too, so he doesn't have to worry about talking.
Is it Don Callis?
Yeah, Don Callis is his manager. So he's got a great manager. He could just be a big badass Japanese guy. Like They just they're just not a ton of huge Japanese guys that are really good wrestlers, and he is that.
Then maybe this was a good call out there. Sting just not being too generous with the praise there. Maybe Takeshita really could be one of the greats and one of the classics. And hey, to be mentioned alongside Great Muta. To be honest, it was very special to be able to fight against Sting. Sting versus Great Muta VHS tapes had a huge impact on me as a kid. Thanks. And that was the one that Sting replied to, another Great Muta in the making. He has all the tools for sure. So,
I'll
hey,
be right back.
maybe that's a little
Sorry.
too much of a cheap pop. What say there, you?
I'll be right back. I'm sorry, Dom.
No problem. Maybe that's the good place to end Cheap Heat on is maybe a little extra cheap pop there for Konosuke Takeshita, a Japanese wrestler who apparently is taking well to AEW, performing well. I do remember there was one sort of reveal where he turned heel in the faction that he's currently in with Don Callis managing. And it was just a great shot the way he did it. He ambushed somebody in the ring, and just the way he kind of revealed himself, he was kind of facing away from the hard camera and just slowly looked over his shoulder at the hard camera, which is just a classic heel way to reveal yourself. You're not like cheering into the camera and hamming it up and looking straight at it. You're like off to one side because you've just done something and you just kind of glare over your shoulder. So maybe he knows the little things very well, or he has somebody teaching him the little things very, very well, and he's an excellent student. But this is good news for AEW. They have a lot going on now. We've been talking about a lot of the older guys like Jim Ross, Ric Flair, and Sting. It's coming to the end for a lot of those guys. But if there are guys like Takeshita still around and MJF, if he can come back from his real life injuries that he's nursing at the moment. And if Samoa Joe, who seems to be carrying the world title very well since winning it from MJF, if these guys can be the future and kind of take that torch from the older guys who are rightfully so getting their nostalgia pop, then maybe AEW continues to be a strong number 2 to the WWE. So great news from a lot of different places today on Cheap Heat. It's cheap, it's heat, it's Cheap Heat. Tell us, did we miss anything from this past week? Tell us in the comments. Tell us in the chat. Let us know if there was something we covered tonight that you had a different take on. Tell us if you agree with us on something and thought we made a good point. Tell us if there's something else from the world of wrestling that happened this past week that you think that we should have been all over. Send us a link if you have it. We will take a look at it. Tell us if there's something to look forward to that you think is coming up in the next week. Hey, maybe one of your suggestions makes it to a future Cheap Heat. If you're watching us on Facebook, if you're watching us on Twitch, if you're watching us on Twitter, thank you very much for finding Don't Bury the Lead on those platforms. If you want to see all of our stuff, not just the live streams, but also the edited clips that John makes and the shorts, the 60-second and under videos that we make out of some of our longer form content, then find us on YouTube. We've got over 400 subscribers. Thank you very much for helping us hit that benchmark. Help us hit the next benchmark. Subscribe if you already haven't. If you have subscribed, hey, get your notifications for us. We try to live stream once a week, usually after SmackDown, except when there's a big pay-per-view. Next week, we will not be live streaming Friday night. We will be live streaming after the Royal Rumble on Saturday night. So look for Don't Bury the Lead next week on Saturday night. And of course, if you get to YouTube, if you find Don't Bury the Lead, a wrestling channel on YouTube, go ahead and look through all the great stuff we have there. We reference some of our older takes occasionally during our live streams here. If you want to see us being confused by Karrion Kross, That goes back to our very first live stream that we did in the fall of 2022. We were confused by Karrion Kross back then. We still kind of are a little bit. But hey, us being confused doesn't mean it's a bad gimmick. It just means that we're kind of taking the ride with them and trying to figure it out as we go along. So, hey, find us at all these great places. I am Italian goodbying our cheap heat here.
Oh, because we need the graphic. Right.
As I am prone to do on just about everything. It's cheap. It's heat. It's the Italian cheap heat. Goodbye.
Yeah. So that is Cheap Heat. Let us know in the chat what you thought of Cheap Heat. Were we right? Is JR good? Yes? No? I know I'm probably going to get some heat about that if I mention it because a lot of people don't seem to like him on the internet, which is strange.
Really?
It's internet people that don't like him. I don't think it's necessarily regular people.
Okay.
There's a certain section of the internet that doesn't care for him. Because he's
Does
like,
it seem to be younger fans that don't remember him pre his Bell's palsy really flaring up on him, and who don't remember when JR could do a whole show and was pretty darn good at it, or is it more long-time fans who are just hey, get out of the way, old man?
No, it's interesting. It's not like the Cornette crowd. It's not the cult that are upset with him. It's more like a certain younger breed of wrestling fans that trash him. Certain parts of the internet wrestling community that are like, oh, JR needs to hang him up. He needs to retire. But I like him. I think he does a good job of getting the baby faces over. So that's my 2 cents.
Maybe that's something that Tony Khan has to weigh here because maybe JR's been on 1-year contracts or short-term things, and maybe the holdup in re-signing him or extending his contract is, hey, how much longer do you think you can do this at a high level? I mean, they're not going to give him a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
But an extra 5 weeks or whatever to get him to Sting's last match would be very welcome.
Yeah, and I think Tony Khan and JR have a great relationship,
Okay.
at least from what JR's mentioned.
Okay,
Because
good.
JR's always talked about how he's been a great boss to work with, and he's always had crazy Vince in his ear all the time and stuff like that. So I think it's been a welcome change. He has mentioned that he does want to keep going. But at the end of the day, I feel like Tony and Jim Ross have a good relationship, so they'll work something out. And I'd be curious to see if Triple H sneaks in there and tries to poach Jim Ross. I mean, look at some of the commentators. Would you mind hearing him on SmackDown? Like, I would go for that.
I don't know if he can do a whole show. That seems to be the question.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they would just save him for a pay-per-view or something.
Yeah, when they had him before, they kind of wanted him in NXT, down in developmental to do some stuff there. But I don't know.
Was he helping developmental, help train guys as well? Is that why?
No, I think it just wanted him to kind of be down there. And once they fired him, he was done from being one of the big guys. And that was just years ago he got fired. And I don't think he was pretty good when he got fired because I can remember Cole being really unpopular. And people were like, why'd they get rid of JR? JR was there. But I think people just sort of moved on. He did stuff in New Japan, which was, of course, good. He was the English commentator for New Japan. And then he was a big signing for AEW, him and Tony Schiavone. And that first couple years with him and JR and Tony, with Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross, it was a good fit.
We've talked about AEW bringing along some younger wrestlers so that when the nostalgia of the nostalgia guys goes away, they seem to have, MJF, Takeshita, Samoa Joe, who can really wrestle and are in their primes. Have they done something similar with the announced teams, or are they really hurting if they don't have, guys have been doing this since the 80s? If Tony and Jim Ross aren't there, are they really lost in AEW? WWE's done a good job of getting younger announcers ready.
Yeah, they have 2 guys in AEW Collision that are great.
Okay.
And they actually announced for Ring of Honor. You might recognize their voice. One guy does New Japan, and he
Okay.
does the U.S. commentating and Ring of Honor, and the other guy just does strictly Ring of Honor. But they're both pretty good. Interestingly enough, my wife was on a. Now we're really doing Italian goodbye. My wife was on a call, and they're like, "Oh, we know you like wrestling, Liz. Like, this is this Ring of Honor announcer, and he
Oh,
actually worked for this company." And like, he has a day job because he's a Ring of Honor announcer. Like, you better have a day job. And Liz, she had no idea who he was because that's pretty obscure. It'd be like saying, "Oh yeah, you like wrestling? Here's the Bonzo Street Bomber." Like nobody knows who this guy is.
nobody knows who the Bonsall Street Bomber is. Don't they have the interwebbies?
Don't they? Don't they have a NJCW? Aren't they
New
subscribed?
Jersey Championship Wrestling. Don't they have that live from the Monroe Business Arena?
Right. Yeah, live from the Monroe Business Arena. Boy, I guess I'll just talk about it. I was talking to Fran recently. He said he wants to
All
try to
right.
get it going again. I don't know if it's such a great idea, but we'll see.
Oh my goodness. Are we breaking the news here on Don't Bury the Lead that there may be a last call for NJCW?
It would be like a last call because I was talking to him about it. I'm like, we're all kind of getting older and in worse shape than we were, and we weren't in great shape to begin with when we were doing it. So I'm not like we would need like a year, or 6 months to be like, hey, you got to stop it with the pizza and wings. And it's a chicken breast and working out now. So
We need some leaner meats,
we need leaner meat.
some intermittent fasting.
Well, thankfully, you in your role as an announcer, you're ready to go.
I'm in shape all the time.
You're pretty much prepped from doing this show.
I don't have to take a bump. I'm not Ric Flair.
Right. Right.
I'm not dying to get in there and get chopped and take a bump and just, get color because somebody hit me on my back.
Right. Yeah, so look out for that potentially.
Oh my goodness, an NJCW reunion.
JCW reunion. It could happen, folks. I think a lot of things have to fall into place, but it's potentially out there.
We're very close to the 4-year anniversary of the last NJCW event. It was, what was it, February of 2020?
Oh, right before the pandemic.
February of 2020, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. I'll have to go back at the tapes. I don't even know what happened. I know I dropped the title to Nick Righteous, and
Nick Righteous finally beat you for the title.
Mm-hmm. And Nick Righteous won the title, and then that was kind of the end of NJCW. So, quite frankly, the Bonzo Street Bomber is owed a little bit of gratitude here, because NJCW would not have gone under if Bonzo Street Bomber retains.
I mean, the Bonzo Street Bomber drops the NJCW singles title, and like suddenly the world goes into lockdown.
Right. Listen, I would have fought off COVID, and that whole pandemic thing would have never happened if I was the champ.
We just needed a fairer match, right?
Right.
Where the Bonzo Street Bomber wasn't screwed out of his title.
Exactly.
By that devious babyface Nick Righteous.
Who was doing all the right things.
Right.
Devious babyface.
Yes, they're good times.
All right, Dom. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining. And Dom,
I have told everybody to check us Saturday, not Friday of next week, as we will be recapping the Royal Rumble pay-per-view premium live event from WWE on Saturday, January 27th. The SmackDown on Royal Rumble Eve. I will probably still watch just to see what happens, but our weekend's recap will be all Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, we'll be ready to go Saturday night. We'll be watching Royal Rumble. We won't be here on Friday for the recap, but Royal Rumble, it's a huge pay-per-view as always. There's always a lot of surprises. Looking forward to that one. So, Dom, Thanks so much for joining tonight. And everyone that stuck in there, it looks like somebody from Twitch hung on for the whole ride, so we really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining. We will be back here on Saturday, and have a great rest of your evening.